All right, and we are going. What's up, YouTube? My name is Prince. I got my main man Ash on. This is another episode of the Embodied Mind podcast. We took a little bit of a hiatus last week. I had some work to do. Ash was coming back from a workshop, and I want to hear a lot about that workshop. Something very similar to the Wim Hof Method, but a little bit different. So same difference. So, Ash, if you don't mind, I'd like to bring it in with a recap of your activities from last weekend while we were on the hiatus.
Yeah. So it was a good experience. Um, I don't know. I don't know where to go with it actually because it
Well,
you know
what did you attend? What was your
right.
work?
Okay. So yeah. So that's probably a good place to start. So yeah, last Saturday, Rob Wilson, who's the head coach for Power Speed Endurance's Art of the Breath program, was here in Phoenix. Technically, it was in Scottsdale, but um, that's just like a suburb of like the valley. Um, so it's kind of like New York City where they have like the five boroughs, and you can kind of like cross over from one borough into the next, and you don't necessarily know unless you know the area that you're in a different municipality. So anyway, so yeah, he was here and he gave this what they call an exposure workshop. So it's kind of a subset of their Art of the Breath workshops. So the kind of overall like head instructor of Power Speed Endurance is Brian McKenzie, and Brian McKenzie is kind of part of the whole. Um, are we still there? It looks like I'm a little bit glitchy on my end. Yeah, no, we're
Yeah,
still
I'm
good.
I'm back. Yeah,
Yeah, we're still good.
you're
Um,
going here, but yeah,
right.
I was.
Okay. So the head of Power Speed Endurance, or the guy who started Power Speed Endurance, is Brian McKenzie. So Brian McKenzie he's a CrossFit gym owner. He's kind of more well known for the his endurance running. So he's done like a whole bunch of like barefoot races, like running 100 miles and all that kind of stuff. But he's kind of plugged in with, like I said, the overall CrossFit community. Him and Kelly Starrett seem to be like, I don't want to say they're best friends, but like they're good friends or whatever. They do a lot of collaborations and stuff together. So I first learned about Brian McKenzie when I watched Kelly Starrett's presentation with shoot, what the heck's the name of that website now? Creative Live, I think. So Kelly Starrett did like a weekend, like a whole weekend thing. It was like a 6 hour or 8 hour total presentation about kind of his overall approach to fitness and training. A lot of mobility stuff because it was kind of just before his book Supple Leopard came out. And as part of that, he had Brian McKenzie on, specifically because Brian McKenzie was an endurance racer. So then eventually, in his pursuit of performance, he got involved, Brian McKenzie, that is, got involved with Wim Hof. And then since Brian McKenzie is kind of located more in kind of Southern California, I think he got pulled into Stanford University and so he's kind of, I guess, like an advisor, I guess, with the researchers at Stanford University and the stuff that they're doing with specific breathing protocols. So like apnea training, cadence, breathing. So like if anybody's familiar with the term, like box breathing is one particular cadence for breathing cadences, and some of their uh, research that they're doing with exposure. In other words, it's like exposure to hot and cold, or like ice baths and sauna treatment and stuff like that. And some of the integrations that they were doing with specific breathing protocols and the exposure. So the place that we were at here in Scottsdale is called Balunsd, which we'll put a link to that in the show notes below if you want to check it out because it has kind of a goofy spelling. Um, but so yeah, we learned some. You know, we did some work with their breathing protocols in order to kind of prepare yourself for the hot and cold exposure. And then after that, we broke off into two groups because at this place, Balanced in Scottsdale, it's pretty cool. It's just kind of like a little hole in the wall gym in Scottsdale. It's actually not really a gym, it's more like a spa, but they have two cold plunge tubs. So it's kind of like an anti hot tub.
On my feet.
Then they have one hot tub, and then they have one infrared sauna. So we broke up into two groups. So like one group went into the ice first, and then one group went into the sauna first. And you know, both exposure to hot and cold. I think at some point we'll spend some more time talking about it in depth when we do in one of our science research segments. But there's been you know a bunch of research that's gone on probably in like the last 10 years or so, but maybe even more recently, like the last 5 years, on the beneficial effects on your immune system on both for ice baths, but actually it seems now more that um, there's a lot of benefits from exposure to heat, like a lot of sauna stuff, or at least it seems like there's been more research revolving around heat and heat exposure and the generation of heat shock proteins as a result of spending time, you know, in like in an infrared sauna or in like what they call sometimes like a barrel sauna, which those get really hot. Those get up to like 212 degrees. And this infrared sauna it was set at like 160 some odd degrees. But because we were rotating in and out, you know, so you're constantly like opening and closing the door as like the heat, the temperature actually dropped. So for me, you know, I'm coming off the summer season here in Arizona. So, and since with my part-time gig at the airport, it's like I'm around 160 degrees all day long. So that wasn't nothing for me. But and then the cold tubs actually they had two different models, and so like one of them just wasn't as efficient as the other. So that water was actually only about if I remember correctly, one of the tubs was like 52 degrees, and then the other tub was 42 degrees. Um, so yeah, so we just like I said, we went through a series of like breathing protocols, a few movement drills as preparation, and then we just jumped right into the cold plunge tub, and then we would get out, do some of the movement drills that they recommended, like as kind of an in between, which is sort of like it's a beginner level kind of thing. Whereas like as you progress, you know, and he was saying that when you go and do like some of their more intensive training, that those they don't do like any movement drills in between cold plunges. They just want to get the body to generate more heat like on its own and not through movement, and then especially like not through shivering. So one of the focuses of the training is to try and get out of the cold before you start shivering, or to be able to train yourself to override the shivering reflex, because you don't want to generate, you know, the idea is you don't want to generate heat through like intramuscularly one of the goals of the cold exposure is to help increase what they call brown activation of the brown adipose tissue. So sometimes you'll see it referred to as BAT in the like in some of the literature. Um, because so brown fat is called brown fat because it's mitochondrially dense. So in other words, like the mitochondria are the little organelles in your cells that once upon a time they were a bacteria, and we formed like such a close symbiotic relationship with the mitochondria that they became a permanent part of our cells. And interestingly, you inherit your mitochondria from your mother only. So that's kind of how some of the DNA testing that they can do on you and check kind of like where your line comes from, because they can tell like different parts of the world where different like strains of mitochondria come from. But your body fat by itself is kind of basically is divided in two types. So you have like what they call like a white your white fat and then your brown fat. And so like when you're a baby and you're first born, obviously babies are born with very, very little muscle mass compared to like their overall mass. It takes them, I can't remember, like off the top of my head, is like 6 or 8 weeks to start to develop like some head control, so they didn't even have the strength to hold up their own head. The only thing that you're born with is like grip strength, because it's for the baby to be able to cling on to, especially to the mother, of course, but also to whatever caregiver. And so, like I said, other than that, babies really don't have much overall muscle mass or any kind of strength, so it takes them a long time to be able to develop that kind of muscle mass. And so they don't have the muscle to be able to generate body heat and to be able to maintain their core temperature. And so when you're a baby, you're born with a very high uh, amount of brown fat to help keep you warm. And as we grow and develop, like the ratio of brown fat that we have tends to decrease over time. And then we're only left with this metabolically, it's not really correct to say it's metabolically inactive. It doesn't create heat or energy, but because we know that body fat is hormonal, but like I said, it doesn't create energy, it doesn't create heat. But what they found now is like through some of this research is that people either that if you live in a really cold climate and you spend a lot of time out in the cold, you'll have a higher amount of brown fat, or if you go through some like this kind of exposure training, you spend some time like dunking yourself in ice water, that you'll also have a higher level of brown fat. And so like I said, just from the fact that it's metabolically active is it's going to be have some positive health outcomes, I guess you can say, compared to white fat. So off the top of my head, I don't really know like if there's a difference in the terms of like the kind of hormones that they secrete and what kind of role that plays as far as like the your endocrine system goes. But you also get what they call like cold shock proteins instead of heat shock proteins, like what you get from being exposed to like a sauna. So in our last episode, we had talked about vitamin D, remember? And so the researchers were, one of the things that they were looking at, one of the markers that they were looking at was a heat shock protein 60. And so, a lot of times heat shock proteins are what they call like a chaperone. In other words, they help proteins get folded into the right shape, or if a protein has been misfolded into the wrong shape, they'll come along, try and fix it up. But one of the things that heat shock proteins do as a secondary role in the body, at least the way that, from what I understand, like the research and stuff now, is they're modulators of the immune system. Is one of their, like I said, is one of their secondary roles. So it's like, uh, in other words, to summarize, is if you spend a lot of time in the hot and in the cold, outside of like that nice cushy like 72 degrees or whatever that people have their AC or their central heating set at, is it strengthens your immune system. Um, so, uh, I went to check out this workshop over there because I kind of want to take my exposure training to like the next level. So, like I said, here in Arizona, obviously we don't have any trouble getting exposed to heat half the year. But it kind of, if you really want to have access to cold water, you got to have some extra resources. Either you need to own an ice machine or you need to have like a cold plunge tub or have access to it. Because, I mean, I don't know, in the wintertime here, like over the overnight lows in the winter, they will get down into the 30s, and sometimes we do have some frosts. So water temperatures, like if you have a pool or whatever, the temperature will drop down into the 50s in the water, like overall, probably like the low 50s. Um, which my thinking was probably like, before that wasn't going to be enough because it's not anywhere, like there's a big difference between like almost 32 degrees, like barely still liquid water, and like 52 degrees. Um, and so last year I had spent a lot of the winter like working to acclimatize myself to the colder temperatures by deliberately underdressing as much as possible. So like, a lot of times, when I was at the airport, I would be outside, in nothing but a t-shirt or maybe a t-shirt and a beanie, and when everyone else is like bundled up into a winter jacket and wearing like a couple of layers. Even when it would rain, and when I'm on my motorcycle, I would try to underdress as much as possible instead of wearing like a heavy leather jacket and all that kind of stuff. Um, so, but I was, I know that I had made like a bunch of progress because when I was comparing to other people, you know, people would be like making comments like, "Oh, you're crazy! You're out here like in just your t-shirt. It's cold out here." And I'd gotten to the point where I was like, I'm all right, like, and but I thought like, okay, it's still because especially, like with the Wim Hof method, if you go and you do like his 10-week course, like the foundation of the Wim Hof method, the 10-week course is cold showers. But in Arizona, like the water comes out of the tap in the summertime, it's like scalding hot. Literally, it will burn you if you don't like turn on the water and let all the hot water run out of the pipes first. Um, and in the wintertime, it's since coming out of the ground, it never really gets much cooler than 76 or something like that. Yeah, I can't remember. I measured, but it's like mid 70s. So you're not taking a cold shower in Arizona ever, unless again you have access to artificially chilled water. So one of the things that I wanted to check out from going out to this workshop was since we were doing actual like ice plunges or cold chilled I don't know what the heck you would call it, like a cold tub, a cold plunge. Um, so we were going to do a cold plunge. I wanted to kind of compare and contrast. And what I found actually, so this was one of the things that I got out of the workshop that I thought was like really beneficial, uh, was that the progress that I had made last year with the approach that I was using worked, because I was able to just get into the cold plunge tub and apply, because a lot of it is like actually mental. Um, so like one of the things that there was like a lecture period that kind of brought us into the training. And so there were some slides, and Rob was showing one of the slides of like a lion chasing a gazelle. And he was like, "What's the difference? If you were to look at like a blood panel of both of these animals right now, they're basically in the same physiological state. They're both in that kind of like adrenalized physiological state. Is epinephrine and norepinephrine are high. They're both in that fight or flight state. But what's the difference between like those two animals? And uh, you know, is that one of them wants to be there and the other one doesn't. Like obviously, like the lion wants to be there. Um, and so, like I said, that was one of the things that I had. So there's a book. I know this is kind of like all over the place because there's like a lot of tangents that kind of all tie into this. But there's a book by an author called Scott Carroll, and the title of the book is called "What Doesn't Kill Us." And we'll put a link into the show notes below in the video description below, or also in the show notes. But I had so. All right, another kind of aside. The reason that I started looking at the power speed endurance guys was because I did a 10-week course through Wim Hof. I followed like a bunch of Wim Hof stuff. Excuse me. Although I never actually went to any of his in live trainings, but I studied all of his stuff. I tried their app. I did all this stuff, and for me, it just didn't resonate. It felt like there was a piece missing. Um, And so, but as part of like all the research and study of his materials that I was doing, I got this book by Scott Carney called "What Doesn't Kill Us." And in that book, he documents his experience with Wim Hof. Like he spent like quite a bit of time with Wim Hof training at his camp in Poland and in the Netherlands and stuff. And I actually found Scott's book more helpful to my process of training than Wim Hof's 10-week course. I think there's like a few, like this is just my opinion based on my experience with the material and what I got out of it, but I kind of feel like they keep a few secrets to hold on to for the live, maybe like for the live in-person trainings, to still give you a reason to come to those, and that's fine. But I feel like I had gotten that piece from Scott's book. And like I said, a lot of it ends up being like the mental game and like what's going on. So it kind of becomes almost like a type of qigong, right? So, it's like what you're doing with your mind has as much importance during the process of qigong as what you're doing with the body. Because I mean, it was like a lot of qigong is just very simple movements, right? There's nothing special there. Some very simple breathing, coordinating your breathing. Again, there's nothing special there. Um, and feel free to interrupt me like with any questions or anything. I know I'm like kind of monopolizing the intro of the show here this morning, but um, because I was actually really excited to talk about my experience as well. I couldn't wait to go and have the experience and to be able to come back and share it with everybody. But and I see that, so we got 6 people watching live now. So if you guys have any particular questions that you want to jump in with on this or on topics that we might cover later on, go ahead and drop those in the chat window, and we'll get with you guys. But so yeah, so like I said, a lot of it has to do with like the mind, and you could say intent, I guess, if you want to talk about that. And when I was on retreat at the monastery over the summer, it's kind of interesting because Jiru also talks about some similar things. So In Buddhist meditation practice, they talk about the four elements. So you're looking at usually, like, we'll just talk about the body for now, but you can talk about the four elements in the body, which would be earth, air or wind, fire, and water, and each one like corresponds to a different um, quality of the body. But it was interesting because actually Jiru was talking about like that when he goes back to Malaysia, because obviously like Malaysia's hot as balls and humid. But he was saying that when he goes back to Malaysia, he never uses the air conditioning because he thinks that it's important to be able to acclimatize your body to the different ranges of temperature that we would experience in nature. And I think his reason is like a little bit different. I think it's more about, again, about the mind, but he was talking about some things that dealt with, the role of intent and balancing the four elements in the body, especially because like, so in the four elements, you talk about fire, but fire doesn't necessarily have to be only hot. Like fire could also be cold. It's like the fire element is the degree of temperature in the body and that you're experiencing or whatever. And so he was talking about using the mind to deliberately cool the body uh, in hot like circumstances. So like I said, there's like a lot of threads in here that kind of all tie into this web for me, like in this portion of it. And I'm trying to like document all this stuff now, and how it all like interrelates in the framework. So that'll be coming out as a download for people, like a free download, for a guide for people to be able to check out. So that'll be coming up. I'll let everybody know when that one's ready. But so where were we? Wim Hof and the role of the mind. And like I said, I'd gotten kind of the clue from Scott Carney's book. And so was working basically with that all last year during the winter. And so then when I was able to jump into the cold plunge tub finally, up in Scottsdale, Balunsd, I was able to just use that skill like right away. So because I was kind of like worried about, or not worried, but I was wondering if like, okay, so I'm coming right off the peak of summer now, so I'm going to be like super adapted to the heat. I got a boatload of capillaries all super close to the skin in order to help effectively exchange heat. And I have a super high acetylcholine response to so that I sweat easily now, like at the buck drop of a hat, in order to again be able to more effectively cool my body. So I was wondering, all right, am I gonna have lost like all my adaptations to the cold from last year's work? And I was pleasantly surprised to see that I didn't. I was able to just jump right in the cold plunge tub. I had like a short, like my first initial exposure when I jumped into the 52-degree tub was a little bit of a challenge at first. It took me about 5 minutes to kind of like adjust myself. But then once I did, then I was able to hang, and then I got into the 42-degree tub, several times, and was able to just maintain, right? And so, uh, like I said, I think um, it was a really valuable experience just from the standpoint of like validation. And then, it was kind of a nice like confidence booster because then I was like, hey, you know what? Actually, like, because I was, I kind of, I don't know, got the feeling that maybe actually the Rob kind of thought I was a pain in the ass because I was asking like a lot of questions that were, uh, I don't know, they're just, I had a lot of questions, and so I'm like, okay, well, I'm talking to the head instructor, the head coach for their program. So this is the guy to ask. And so if you didn't know me already, you might think that I was like just trying to show off with the questions that I was asking, like, oh, look how much I know, But that wasn't the case. But yeah, I'm kind of wondering if maybe he thought I was a pain in the balls. But at the same time, it was a nice confidence booster because I was able to walk away from the event and think, okay, you know what, like at least as far as like the material that we were covering this weekend, like these guys, don't know any more than what I know. It wasn't like I said, it just comes back to like validation. It means that my compass is pointed in the right direction. It's like I'm moving in the right direction, at least with my own training and understanding stuff like that. Um, but I do want to say, like, in all fairness, that it was, I mean, I think it's even in the title of like their workshop, it's a 101 level experience. It's not, I don't think it's meant to be like a deep dive experience. It's a first point of contact with the training for people. So I'm going to continue to pursue the training events with these guys to future opportunities and try to go to some of their more like intensive stuff and kind of see like where that goes. Because overall it falls under like what I talk about as in my framework that I'm developing and my coaching, what I refer to as adaptation. So this kind of adaptation to hot and cold exposure is a key part of that framework overall. So, like I said, I'm really interested in pursuing it even a little bit more deeply and working with these guys in the future. So that is a very long. That was a half hour ramble about the topic, but yeah, so it was a good experience, and I'm glad that I went. Are you chatting with somebody over there?
No,
She's not messaging you,
no.
so
Ratchet.
right. Uh,
It wasn't any ratchet people there, was it?
uh, Hold on, you lost the audio.
Oh man, yeah. I kind of been quiet over here because I'm wondering if I need to reboot. Um,
No, I think it was on my end. I think my cord was loose.
no, I mean, like some of the time when you were talking, I would just be completely just frozen.
Yeah, I saw that on the screen. It was kind of like blanking out a little bit, but I think the recording looks like it's going all right.
Yeah, the recording was fine because they didn't see me like lose like a minute or two every 5 or 10 minutes.
Right.
Um, what's next on the agenda?
So, the
So this
topic of the topic of today's show is supposed to be your diet is not a religion.
yeah, this has been something that has troubled me. I don't know what your intent was, but just like with the vegan community, it's one reason why, like, for SEO purposes, I say I'm vegan, but then I like don't say I'm vegan because I don't
Right.
consider myself a vegan. I eat primarily plants, and I'll leave it at that because I mean, for me, I'm just trying to live. I'm just trying to train and eat good food, and I don't want the food that I eat to be the most interesting thing about me. Right? That
Right.
that doesn't define me. Um, like I told you, the person I like, she showed me a picture of a pork roast wrapped in bacon, and she was like, "Don't you wish you were here?" And I'm looking at her like, "I wish I was there. I don't know
Right.
about to eat the pork, but
Be eating
maybe to
something.
eat something." Eat something.
Right.
If I have to eat that to get to the other thing, I'm gonna have to edit this out because I think she's gonna start listening to these.
Well, I hope so. That'd be nice. Um, but yeah, I mean, definitely the vegan community is probably most well known for that. It's like it becomes almost part of like their how they introduce themselves. Like, hi, I'm so and so, and I'm vegan. Like like straight out the gate. Um, but over, as time is progressing, I think more and more people, I mean, the keto people are going to be just as guilty of that, and that paleo community is also just as guilty of that. Um, so the reason that I wanted to talk about that today, or why I thought it would be good to talk about, is actually because I just had an experience last night that made me think about it, and the person that I'm referring to in this episode, she also follows me on social media. So if you're listening, don't take this as clapback, because actually I'm grateful for the experience, because it gave us a good chance to bring it up and talk about it. So everything is it's all good. Um, but the weather here in Arizona this year has been really crazy. So like we had a really super mild spring all the way up through the end of June. And then all of a sudden, like the beginning of July hit and summer rolled on, but it wasn't so bad. Like the heat wasn't quite as bad as it got up to. Like normally, we'll peak like pretty close to about 120 in terms of like air temperature. I don't think we got much higher than 115 this year, maybe 116. And then the monsoons came in early. It cooled off. It stayed really humid um, for a long period, and then now we're getting the tail end of these hurricanes that are rolling in, or the tropical storms or whatever they are, that are rolling in from the Pacific. So the weather is kind of coming up from the southwest corner of the state, because it's coming off the Pacific Ocean and over Baja, and then coming up into the state, which is a weird weather pattern anyway, because it usually comes out of like the southwest, or sorry, southeast instead of the southwest. So that by itself is weird, but now it's bringing a lot of rain with it. So I actually Googled it yesterday just to check, because it's been so unusual. But the average annual rainfall in Arizona is about 8.5 inches, and we had 3 inches of rain yesterday.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so we had like almost half of our annual average rainfall in one day. And so I was at work at the airport all day yesterday, and there was like standing water on the ramp. It was like a river. I mean, the water was just like flowing, and we had flights divert and all kinds of stuff. Um, but so I was outside all day, cold and wet, and when it got to you know I made it through like almost the whole day. Um, because I had brought like my meals, I had prepared and everything like that. But my planned dinner that I had bought was like a cold salad, and I was going to eat some sardines with it, like a cold green salad. But somebody came to find me, and I was planning on being home by like 9 p.m. And instead, I wasn't going to get home until like about midnight. And I was like, you know what? My feet have been cold and wet all day. I've been working, like I've had to actually actively work and use some of those techniques that I developed from my exposure training to keep my body temperature up and to stay. But I just by that point, I was like, I need a hot meal, and like a cold salad, and sardines wasn't going to cut it. So I went up to like the restaurants or whatever, and I grabbed myself like a nice juicy burger, and then I grabbed like a granola bar out of the vending machine. And so this person I'm talking about, she happened to be seeing me, and she called me out. She's like, "That's not keto." And it was a good natured. There's not a problem. Like, she was just kind of poking me over it, but she called me, like I said, she was calling me out about it, and it's fine. But and that's where I said is like the point is that actually it's like your diet should not be a religion, right? And it's taking the place for a lot of people. Like it's filling that role. It's like as we've gotten like more and more secular, it's like people are starting to like identify. Like I said, people identify with the wrong things, man. Like either they identify with their politics or they identify with their diet, or for like I said, like a lot of time, like what I call like the political vegans. It's like their diet overlaps with their politics. It's like the foundation, or like they go hand in hand. From I think from my point of view, and as a coach and for working with people, and I think what's going to serve most people best is to remember that like your diet should not be a religion. You shouldn't be identifying with your diet. Your diet should be a tool that you use to meet your needs. It depends on like what those needs are. And, that's gonna and those needs will change depending on the time and place and like the other circumstances around you. So, it's like I said, is that my needs in the moment last night changed, and guess what? I went and got something that was going to help me meet those needs. Even and I'll even admit, some of that was emotional. After spending more than 13 hours in the cold and being wet, it was like I was feeling kind of miserable, and I needed a little bit of comfort food to help goose me through like the last couple hours. Um, but I think like the important thing is that you don't let it throw your mind off. Like, oh, you know what? Like, oh, it wasn't a failure, right? Like, I don't have to look at it as like a failure. And so then, because like, many people will take that experience and go, oh, I'm such a loser. I can't stick to, like whatever. And then now I'm going to use that as an excuse to go eat like a whole half gallon of ice cream and turn it into like a 2 week bender before like, oh, okay, now I'm ready to get back on track. It's like, understand like what it is, where that piece fits, and if you need to like adjust in one time and space, adjust and then readjust again after.
Yeah. I was thinking of I don't know if you know the like financial advisor Dave Ramsey. He's from across town, so he's big. This is the Bible Belt too, so naturally he's big with like he's in his programs in a lot of like certain uh, Christian churches, but he's in Nashville, so naturally I know him. But anyway, there was an episode on his radio show where this guy is like, "Oh, Dave, I've been doing all your steps for years, and now I got houses and this and that." He was like, "That's awesome, man. Well, why are you calling me other than to tell me that my stuff works?" And he's like, "Well, I really want to buy a Corvette." And he was like, "Okay, so what's the problem?" He was like, "You got all this money that you've accumulated. You don't have any debt." He was like, "Enjoy your money, right? If you want a Corvette, you put in the work." And the same thing applies to like diet and training and all this other stuff. Is I really don't like the saying there you shouldn't have a cheat meal. Like, don't have a cheat meal. Now I agree with in principle, because I'm getting that from Mike and Sincere, because Sincere is like, well, what if your spouse was like, okay, I'm gonna have a cheat day every Saturday. I'm just like, you can have the house, have the couch. I'm gonna go cheat on you with Big D Dave down the street. So I understand that. But where I was going and what to apply to what you were saying is like, you do all this work, you're eating clean, you're sticking to your philosophical views on diet and training, but there's a party coming up. or there's a football game, or there's something, there's some event, and it's like, well, the food there is not going to be what I normally eat, and it's like, okay, you can go and be that person. I got a coworker, and last night she wasn't even working, and I brought like some queso, some kind of chips that were like, it was like queso salsa flavored. Um, what is it? The I can't think of what the chips are called, but they're always in like the health food set, and they're like, oh, she can't eat that. She can't eat cheese, and they're like, they flipped open the over the bag and start reading like the label of things that she can't eat, and I'm like, she's not even here. Like I wouldn't have bought them. I bought them because I knew she wasn't here,
Right.
and like technically, I'm not supposed to eat them either. But I was like, fuck it, man. These sound interesting. I want to know what they taste like. I'm gonna buy. I'm gonna bring them. If I don't like them, everybody else can eat them because that the vegan lady that everyone is on their tiptoes about is not working tonight. So it's cool. Somebody they will get eaten, and then I'm gonna
Right.
buy these other ones that obviously everyone can eat. And if they're left over and she's here Sunday or Monday, she can eat them. Right. So it's like you never want to be that person, but at the same time, it's like, oh, God forbid you ate a carb, right? It's not the end of the world.
Right.
You ate, you ate some ice cream and it was dairy ice cream. You know what? You if you do the work, reward yourself. Like live a little, right? I'm not trying to be the perfect vegan, the perfect vegetarian. I care about kung fu and meditation. And as long as if I gotta eat a freaking if I gotta eat a pork roast wrapped in bacon to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish and to get with the person I want to get with, I'm gonna do it, right? Because at the end of the day, that's low on my list of priorities, and that was something I brought up. The person who helped me transition to vegan that I was kind of infatuated with last year. There was a reason I kept telling us there was a reason that I didn't really mesh with them in the beginning. And it was because they were so hardcore about animal rights and being vegan and eating this and eating not eating that. And I'm like, yo, I got other stuff I got to worry about. I'm trying to live. I'm just trying not to get shot by the cops in my neighborhood. And that
Right.
was a big thing that happened back in the spring. Is by my high school, this dude got gunned down by a cop, and they said he was running. He'd stolen something. His family, it's I don't know. I don't even know if it's ever still been resolved. But I mean, like, I'm just trying to live, man. Like, I can't be out here protesting for animals when I might catch the same thing just because for mistaken identity or something.
Right. Just because you're black.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the cops knock on my door, because somebody said I look like a suspect. And
Right.
so, like to me, it's more important stuff out there than what you eat. And I'm not criticizing anybody. Everybody's got their own soapbox and the issues that they care about. I'm just trying to be the best martial arts strength coach that I can be. That's what's important to me. That and
Right.
my own happiness. If I gotta go live on a desert island and eat and fish and play with Wilson, if hey man, like I said, me training and playing with Wilson and hopefully I'm not the only one there, you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, is that you want it should be a tool that serves you and your needs. You shouldn't be serving your diet. It's like
Yeah.
my grandfather told me, when I was a kid, he was like, "Oh, you know what? You should just eat to live, don't live to eat."
Yeah.
And it's like just
Yeah.
like kind of common, like I said, is that I think a lot of times people start losing their common sense. Um, which actually this was kind of like my one of the things that I wanted to finish off with when we were talking about the exposure workshop, but it applies here too. Is like um, you know, so a lot of it is just like a lot more simple than you think it is. It's like just go, you know, it's just a matter of doing it, you know, and then being like consistent. So it's like if you're, you know, like if you're consistently going off your diet or whatever, then maybe that means it's not a good diet for you,
Mhm.
you know? So it's like what I like to say about like the concept of you know, like a cheat meal or like a cheat day or whatever. Um, you know, it's like if you want to cheat, you're in the wrong relationship.
Yeah.
You know, like I've been married for like 21 years. I never needed to cheat, right? Like, you know, so it should be like the same, you know, like whatever you're deciding to do, it should be like, I mean, you know, sometimes you need to like adjust some things, you know, like and turn things into like a, you know, to where it will become like a lifestyle or whatever. But, you know, it may not be a lifestyle that really suits you, considering your other priorities, right? Because life is full of conflicting priorities and competing demands. And so even though like no matter how you know, I'll pick on paleo so that I'm not picking on veganism too much. But let's say paleo, right? It's like no matter how good paleo sounds in theory, if you can't make it work, you know, as part of your overall life, then it's probably not like a good approach for you, and that's okay, right? There's going to be like something else, you know, we can find where, and that's where like the value of you and I come in as coaches. You know, it's like we can help people find different strategies and approaches that can work for them, like in their overall, like the overall cycle of their life or the patterns, you know, of their lifestyle and their demands and their priorities and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You
think
know, so go
oh,
ahead.
my bad. Well, I was gonna say, like, I've been following this young cat on YouTube that he's a college student. He's been doing calisthenics. He started when he was in high school, so like 4 years now. Looks amazing. And he's not in it to do tricks and beat a bar. He's like, look, I decided I was gonna try this instead of lifting weights. And it's all about consistency. Like I started with he's a college student, so he doesn't have a lot of course, now he's got 500,000 YouTube subscribers. But even still, if you're not like bodybuilding and bro science, you're even with all those subscribers, you know, he doesn't have like super big numbers, you know, million like CT Fletcher or somebody.
Right.
Every other video is a million views. But I watched the video yesterday, and he was like, "Oh, this is cheap ways to get your protein to support, you know, your workouts." And he bought all his food at Walmart, spent like $50. You know, he was like, "This will last me a week and a half," and it wasn't anything. It was like bananas, you know, some frozen fruits, vegetables, bread where he could make like, you know, deli sandwiches when he's on the run, and some chicken, like very basic stuff. It's like it's not a hard diet to follow at all. Matter of fact, I wrote it down because I was like, I might recommend this to people that I train if I decide to open up the garage for the next few months. But it was all about consistency. Like, look, this is what I'm going to eat when I want to enjoy myself. Yeah, I'm going to have something else, you know, go to this college party, free college food, which is probably not going to be healthy, but you know, at these little college things, because they'll have, if it's like where I went to school, at least they always had like desserts and baked, like lots of like good stuff, but not really good for you if
Right.
you're, you know, worried about. That's why there was the freshman. We didn't have a freshman 15. We had like a freshman 30
Right.
because they were always giving us free food. Um, but it was all about, look, these are the work. This is the workout I do. This is when I do it. How often I do it. This is what I eat, and this is what I'm going to do for the next this is what I've done for the last 4 years since he was 14, 15. And with consistency, boom. I mean, dude looked like, I mean, his physique is impressive. I was like, damn, maybe I need to try some of that. Maybe I need to get back in the uh maybe I need to crack this book open, learn how to overcome some gravity. So, it's like, even with a coach, the coach is just there to guide you, not to enforce their philosophy, right? We're not trying to be Phil Jackson or Tex Winters and say, you must run the triangle offense or you will not play. It's no, I mean, that works in sports, but in this kind of coaching, it's let's figure out the best plays for you. And then it's just my job to help you stick to that.
Right. Right. Find strategies that make it sustainable for, for your life. And then, like going back to, again, like what you were saying about like the cheat meal or the cheat day. For me, so for instance, I like the idea of maintaining some metabolic flexibility. So, there's been some research that has shown that, or some studies at least that have shown, like if you get deeply keto adapted, and then you get exposed to, or you have a large carbohydrate load, that you'll show like blood sugar numbers similar to a diabetic. Your body will have a hard time like clearing out all that carbohydrate. And for me, keto is a means to an end. It was a way to lean out to a level that I was happy with. So for me, like the plan was always to go back to like long term, like long term was always to go back to more like a low carb paleo style diet. So like a little bit higher levels of carbohydrate than what would be considered like a keto approach probably. And then to vary that like seasonally. So to do like a true kind of like keto approach for about 3 months, like during the winter months, and then maybe even go kind of just vegan for a month or two in the spring, just to give my to challenge my body a little bit and to give my digestive system a break, and then to transition into like a paleo approach for the summer and fall. So there's some interesting research that I want to talk about, like coming up in the future, but from Dr. Sachin Panda's lab and about circadian rhythms that show that your body is more insulin sensitive naturally in the summer than it is in the winter, or at least I don't know if it's dealing with people only of like Northern European descent or predominantly Northern European descent or not. But it makes sense because that's when like all your fresh fruits and stuff are available compared to like the wintertime when, in Northern Europe, despite what the vegans would tell you was not possible,
Yeah.
before modern agriculture.
Yeah.
So you would have been eating like a higher fat diet with more animal products and like some preserved like fruits and vegetables. Um, but so yeah, I kind of got off top. Oh, the cheat day. So like I said, is that I have a planned higher carbohydrate day every week, which is on Monday, and on those days, it's like if I because if I want to have, I mean, I'm still again sticking to whole foods for the most part, but if I want to have, a slice of pizza with my wife and kids because they want to have a slice of pizza, then I'll have that on my higher carbohydrate day, and then the rest of the week it's back on track. So I don't have the mindset of that it's a cheat. Right. And it's because then what happens, like the cheat meal turns into the cheat day, and the cheat day turns into the cheat weekend, turns into that 2 week bender. And then again, like that psychology that comes back into play, like, oh, I'm such a failure. I'm a loser and I can never stick to, it's like, I think we've talked before about like the importance of kind of like that internal dialogue that you're having with yourself and like those kind of stories and that you tell yourself and the impact that they have on you. So, so yeah, I think we kind of beat that horse to death. You have anything else to wrap up with that on that?
I think we hit it all.
All right, so before we wrap up the show, we're heading into the last leg of it now. Um, looks like your amigo didn't join us this week. Um, so this week's study I wanted to talk about was pretty interesting. It's titled "A Bidirectional Relationship Between Sleep and Oxidative Stress and Drosophila" by Vanessa M. Hill et al. And if you want to check out the study for yourself, there's a link in the show notes below, or in the video description below as well. And so this study appeared in the journal PLOS, and so it was pretty interesting because you know I think the majority of everybody loves sleep for the most part, but nobody gets enough. And I don't think that people are prioritizing it enough, especially if you have like particular body composition goals in mind. Uh, so like Rob Wolf, he even goes so far as to call sleep one of the four levers of keto. Um, there's been a boatload of research on the effect of sleep deprivation and the negative effects that have on your body composition, and it's going to make it a lot harder for you to stay out of the sugar bowl uh, because being sleep deprived raises your cortisol, and cortisol and insulin in the body compete.
Uh,
So,
Diabetic.
so if you, well, I mean, you can clear cortisol out of your system by spiking your insulin. So that's part of the reason why people crave sweets when they're stressed. Um, but you know, even though like we know a lot about the effects of sleep deprivation, the scientific community still really doesn't have like a good handle on like the fundamental reason like why we need to sleep. And so I thought this study was pretty interesting because it kind of shows like a little piece of that. Um, so basically, um, what they did was they studied short sleeping fruit flies. So they had some mutant variations of so like the your basic fruit fly is what they call like a wild type fly, and that's what they use for the control. And then they compared them to these short sleeping mutant fruit flies. And what they found was that consistently the short sleeping mutant flies had shorter survival times after being exposed to a pesticide called paraquat. And, so they did a few other variations of the experiment where they caused like wild type flies to sleep more and see what happened to their response to oxidative stress. But I would like to kind of focus, at least just for the purposes of right now, on the effect of the shorter survival times after uh, exposure to pesticides. And because so the thing is that we want this to be relevant to like human health and wellness, right? So the first thing is that we're talking about like fruit flies. And so even though their immune systems they function differently than an immune system in a human being, overall, sleep and circadian rhythms are pretty well evolutionarily conserved. So, all animals share a common ancestor, a long, long time ago. I'm not even sure like where the divergence happened, but so like almost all animals that we know of have some kind of like sleep behavior or some kind of sleep cycle. And so it's that at the genomic level, that is strongly evolutionarily conserved. So it's going to be very, very similar or the same in humans as it's going to be in fruit flies, as it's going to be in mice. And so that is kind of like what they were looking at because they were using these genetically short sleeping fruit flies, so they didn't have to induce like weird conditions on them that were gonna the conditions themselves were gonna be stressful, and then not be able to separate, the effects of the stress from the sleep deprivation and all that kind of stuff. And so why I think, like I said, that this is particularly relevant in terms of like the shortened survival times after their exposure to pesticides, because we've talked about this before, like in past episodes, that like we're awash in herbicides and pesticides in the 21st century. It's like it's like unless you're growing like 100% of your own food in your backyard, it's like you can't avoid exposure to pesticide and herbicide. So there's a direct implication for human health here. And that, if you're burning the candle at both ends and you're not making sure that you're getting, uh, your regular 8 hours of sleep or even more possibly, I mean, you're going to have like a direct impact on your body's ability to handle the oxidative load that's coming from, these, pesticides and herbicides that are everywhere. And so just to give people something actionable, something that you can take away. I don't think that we've talked that much about sleep hygiene in the past, have we?
No, not at all.
What's your setup like?
You know what we did? I think we talked about the app. Oh shoot.
Right, Brain FM.
Yeah. So what I do is one, I have like my evening vitamins. This is, I'm gonna sound like a hypocrite after I was like, no, I don't take any supplements. At the time I didn't, but I like I normally do. I was just out of everything. So I think and I just got a new multivitamin. I don't remember, I got to actually set them out for this week, but you're supposed to take 3, and sometimes I'll do like 2 in the morning, and then I'll have 1 at night, because I have this, I have this crazy, it's not, I don't think there's anything to scientifically back it, but I'm just like, well, if I'm asleep and my body is trying to recover from my workouts, pending if I can get into that deep, what is it, the alpha wave or something of sleep, then I'll like start to repair myself, and like make hormones and stuff. So I need to take a vitamin at night before I go to bed to help with all of that. So I have something there.
Right.
And then I'll take like so I split my aggressive strength. I take 1 of those in the morning, 1 at night. And I just started back doing uh, man, being on my job, I hear all these medications. I can't even remember what, because I almost said Vyvanse, and I think that's like ADHD medication. I don't do that. It's it starts with a V, and it's like supposed to help you like relax, sleep. So I do 2 of those. It's in the other room. I can't think of what it's called. And then I have like another one that came from True Nutrition that's like got GABA, magnesium, and zinc. If I
Right.
do that one, I'm like a zombie the next day. Like I don't know if it's too strong for me or what. But probably over the holidays, if I'm back working for the school system and they're out on break and all I'm doing is here banging out YouTube videos and stuff, I'll probably do that then because I don't really have to be up early. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, if I were, working completely for myself, I would take that just because I get in it, man. It puts me out, and it takes me a while to like come up, which I think is good if I'm, if I, it's good when I wake up and I meditate, and that's the first thing I normally do every day, because then that kind of slowly
Right.
wakes me, brings me back. That, and I just had this thing about, I don't know, that's something we can talk about offline or in another episode, that I feel like the closer you are to like a sleep state when you meditate, I feel like as far as the Neigong training that I've been exposed to, that like helps you go deeper. It's like better as far as developing the chi and all of that. Is like the closer you are to a sleep state, the better your meditation is, and like the more productive it is. So I do that, and then I don't always do the brainwave. What is it? Brain
Brain
FM.
FM.
Uh, but I found that when I do play Brain FM, normally I've been doing that when I'm like really wound up after work, when I get home late and I just cannot wind down. It will knock me out, and like I don't need any supplements or anything for that.
Right.
And uh I try to keep it everything as dark as possible. I'm a light sleeper. I think that's from the military. Actually, it shouldn't be, because I had planes and the catapults, and then the screw was under our berthing because we were in engineering. So I slept through all of that. So I shouldn't say I'm a light sleeper, but um, I guess when I'm really tired, I'm not. But normally, like if my phone vibrates or something, I'll jump right up.
Right.
I think Ying has something to do with why I like jump out of bed to check my phone, which
Right.
is not good. She's told me to start turning my phone off at night. It's like, don't reply to me. Turn off your phone. So that
Right.
might be the next step. But then it's like, well, how do I listen to Brain.fm if I turn off my phone?
Well, you should be able to, because that's what I do is I turn my phone. Actually, I leave it on 24 hours a day, but I put my phone in the do not disturb mode.
Oh, okay.
So like notifications and calls won't come through.
Okay. That's what I need to
Um,
do.
yeah, and then so that's one thing that I do, and then it's like you should definitely try to unplug from any of your devices you know at least 1 hour, but ideally 2 or 3 hours before bed, because the blue light from your device interferes with the melatonin production, and the melatonin, I mean that's what the GABA does, is it helps stimulate the production of melatonin. But I was going to ask you, actually, you think that the True Nutrition GABA works pretty good? Because there's another one. There's
Me
another
out.
yeah.
It
There's
puts me
another
out.
brand called Dr. Parsley Sleep Formula, which comes like really highly recommended. And I was thinking about trying that, but that one's pretty pricey. Um, and then, but I was thinking of trying the True Nutrition GABA too, because I like their products in general. And but it's good to know that, because that it can put you into deeper sleep that takes a while to wake up from. Because then what I would try doing is try taking your GABA, like maybe 2 hours before you go to bed, so that by the time you hit like that 8 hour mark or whatever, like when you have to wake up, by then you're gonna be coming out of it. Because I wouldn't the point is to wake up feeling like refreshed and ready to go in the morning, not like a zombie. I don't have any trouble with that already, feeling like a zombie in the morning sometimes.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, so that's good. I'll give the True Nutrition GABA a try then.
Yeah, I think really the biggest issue for me is doing YouTube is I do you when I'm doing it, not even, I won't say the right way, but when I'm like on top of my views and everything.
Right.
A lot of times, like I'll either, oh, I'm gonna go do a video at 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock. I'm gonna start, recording, and
Right.
I'm like, these aren't even my brightest lights that I have on in here. These are like the umbrella lights. Um, but when I got like all the lights on, now I've just spiked my cortisol, and then I'm all hyped up and everything. So when I record late at night, then it's like it's really hard to wind down. Or if I
Right.
post a video at night, I'm like checking the comments and I'm on my phone and watching it. So really it's like I've been saying, I need to go somewhere where I could just focus on all this stuff and have it done. Okay, my video's done 2 p.m. Now I go enjoy my day, or I'm gonna work a 9 to 5 day online. 5, I'm out, and that way I can wind down in the evening like a normal person, and not, not be all wired and everything because I been in front of 6 studio lights talking for 15 minutes, and
Right.
now it takes me 2 hours. It takes me till midnight to fall asleep because I spike my cortisol myself with my miniature sunlight,
Right.
artificial sunlight.
Yeah, and then it's like one of the things is too that I like even in the morning, like I try not to look at my phone until after I've had a chance to do like my meditation.
Mm,
Because if I get up in the morning and as soon as like if I see like any notification or if I see like an email from Sifu or from somebody like something that I have to address, then it starts like that whole internal dialogue going, like your to-do list starts going, and then I'm not going to have like a productive sitting. And if you're going to have the same thing that happened to you, like if you're looking at your phone like too close to bedtime, that like you're going to see like so and so's email, because everybody thinks that like uh a failure to plan on their part constitutes an emergency on your part, and now you need to like help solve their problem. So it's like that's just gonna again, it's gonna start sparking off that to-do list, and oh, I should really do this before I go to bed, or I'll do this first thing in the morning, instead of like winding down to get into like that kind of like sleep
yep.
space. So yeah, the earlier in the day that you can unplug from your device, and the later in the day that you can wait to start is probably going to be, a good overall plan of attack, just in general, but not specifically around your sleep. And so yeah, so then again, like I said, what we've mentioned already too is the Brain FM app is useful. um, I don't like it as much for trying to sleep at night. I have used it a few times, uh, just for nothing else because trying to sleep with a pair of headphones in, like a pair of earbuds, or sleeping with headphones on is kind of a pain.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's where I guess it's good to be single. Not well, not right. But anyway, I don't use it with earbuds. I just let it play. But
right.
yeah,
But I mean,
if I weren't sleeping alone, that might be an issue.
yeah, I mean, they do recommend though that you use headphones for it because it's got the binaural audio that's supposed to help trigger the different brainwave states.
Mm-hmm.
But what I still use it for naps. I will use it for that because it's only like a half an hour gig or whatever. And then also, actually, what I've been using it for now a lot is if I get up in the morning, but the boys are already awake and they're
Mm-hmm.
usually kind of like clicking on the keyboard or clicking the mouse or whatever, and that can be distracting. So if I haven't gotten my sitting in yet, I'll sit and I'll put my headphones in and I'll uh, fire up the Brain FM app and I'll use I'll set it to like the forest kind of background. So it's just like being in a natural setting
Mhm.
and just try to get the volume dialed in to just where it's like enough to kind of like the forest
Drown out.
sound, yeah, just enough that the forest sounds are blocking out like the keyboards, but not so loud that it's the only thing that's in my attention that I can focus on is the sound of the app in my ears.
Mhm.
Um, but I find that it's really useful for that. Or, if I need, if I'm in a crowded space and I need to concentrate a little bit more and block out some, especially like conversations and stuff that are going on around me, that it works for that. So, like I said, I don't like to sleep with it overnight. I do like to use it for naps. Um, but also like because for me, like I've got everything else is working pretty well right now. It's like I've got my routines going to the point where like my diet is working for me. My training is still not like really where I'd like it to be in terms of like the amount, the intensity or the volume. So it's just kind of on a maintenance mode right now, but it is what it is. But I think so. The next piece that I'm going to be addressing for myself is trying to improve my sleep like a little bit more. So I'm kind of doing that with a combination of like meal timing and then I'm going to try like a GABA supplement or something like that to see if it can help me get into a little bit deeper, more restful sleep. And then I'll have a little bit more energy to hit the workouts harder on my workout days.
Nice.
So I think that's probably it for this one. You got anything else you want to wrap up with?
No, I got a lot of work I got to do for Urban Acolyte TV as far as trying to expand the brand. Although it's still going to be heavily Star Wars focused, I want to start talking about some other things that I like as far as geek culture is concerned. And then I got to get to work. I got like this whole Captain America Avengers thing where there's like a fitness aspect to it, and I got it all kind of in notes and in my head, but I mean that doesn't matter. I got probably 10 20 videos that all could have done really well still in my head that never
Right.
materialized, and this is like, yo, this is like part of my fitness business. This has to happen. I just haven't had time to sit down and do it. So I don't know if I can get it done. Then November 3rd is like no excuses then to because I'll have the time then to sit down and do it and get caught up on some other stuff. So I'm hoping to get it all out before the end of the month. But if not, just do the best I can with the time that I have available.
Right. All right. That sounds good. And then my coaching program was going to be going on pre-sale here pretty soon, so everybody should keep an eye out for that if you're interested in getting some coaching. That's gonna, like I said, that'll go on pre-sale for a discount, probably starting by the end of the month. And then my coaching program will open officially on November 28th, and at that time, it'll go up to its full price. So if you're interested, jump on early and save yourself probably about $50 a month on that. So as always, if in the future the live streams are going to be available only to our patrons on Patreon. So if you're interested in supporting the show on Patreon, go ahead and check the video description below for the link. And you can check the video description below for links to the products and services that we talked about in this episode. So we have the Power Speed Endurance, Balunsd, What Doesn't Kill Us, and the Brain FM apps. And this, we should put the link in there too for the GABA supplement that we talked about. But you can also follow us on social media. I think that'll do it for this week's episode. As always, thanks for watching.
All right. See y'all next week.
Sounds good.